This is the new Porsche Taycan. You may have heard of it. It's only been out for about a year, which means you'll also know that this is Porsche's answer to cars like the Tesla Model S. And you thought electric steering was bad. This is Porsche's flagship all-electric vehicle, this being the Turbo S model, producing 750 horsepower, 774 pound-feet of torque, and a 0 to 60 time of 2.6 seconds. But unlike other cars, the updates year on year are a bit different. The range on this Turbo S model is just shy of 200 miles, but its fast charging now allows for a 5 to 80% charge in 22 minutes, if you can find a 270 kilowatt charger. It also uses plain old plug charging and will even detect how much residual energy the solar panels of your house collect and use only what doesn't interfere with powering your home. The drivetrain is four-wheel drive across the range with, again, another game changer, a 2-speed transmission along with Porsche's torque vectoring differential, and in the spirit of tradition, the 21-inch wheels all-around house carbon ceramic brakes, which are available and as pricey as they have been. A rear drive option should be arriving in the next year, bringing the EV game to the purist market ever more quickly. The Taycan as a four-door doesn't quite match the spaciousness of the Panamera, and the overall dimensions are a few millimeters less, but the front track is a bit wider at 1689 millimeters, and the rear track is 1656. And this is all part of where the Taycan starts to claim its stake. The roofline sort of mimics the 911 swoop and sits 2 inches lower than its competitor Model S, and the 18-way power seats allow for a lower seating position compared to its competitors. And driver position is something Porsche does not compromise on. The rear can seat 2 above-average height adults with an optional +1 seat in case you need to smuggle a third. But more than the specs, this car is a pivotal point that while the future is still vague, the Taycan gives us a reason to be eager rather than uncertain about what may come. Porsche has spent over 6 billion euros in the adaptation of their facilities for the electric market, which includes a production line that is 911 meters long. Of course it is. But for now, let's take a moment to take in what may be the new challenge to the standard. So we're inside the car. I'm here with Mike Laskowski from Porsche Princeton. And what do we think? Let's start with the seating position. The seating position's perfect. It's just like a 911. The 18-way sport seats are straight out of every other Porsche. You're low in the car, which is a big deal considering I'm sitting on all of the batteries. The steering wheel feels just like any other Porsche steering wheel. The front axle I feel I'm very connected to. There's a good amount of weight distributed across. It's not rear engine, so you actually feel somewhat of a mid-engine feel to it. And the front axle is extremely responsive. The throttle is like that. The 0 to 60 time is pretty much like a 911 Turbo S. So that part isn't what's so dramatic. What's nearly unsettling is how, just like a light switch, it's just on or off. There's no lag, there's no delay, there's no buildup of power like in a gas-powered engine. It just goes. It's pretty significant. But aside from that, the car handles beautifully. It's on air suspension, and I'm in normal mode right now. And it's ironing everything out. If I turn it into sport mode, it becomes a little bit stiffer. The throttle's a little bit more responsive. When I let off the throttle, the car just coasts. It doesn't have that regenerative drag braking. You can turn that option on and you can have that functioning. But if you turn it off, it feels just like a regular car. The only thing about this car that feels electric is the fact that it's so quiet. The interior is stunning. They've taken all of the best bits out of the 992 and sort of made them a little bit softer and more luxurious. The only thing I don't really think we need so much is all of the electric screens. I'm perfectly happy with having an analog interior in an electric car. I mean, it might even save on some of the battery. So that's it. Porsche has gone all in on electric propulsion. I guess this is what future kids have to look forward to and get passionate about. But before we make it that morbid, if you're 8 years old, then Gabe, hear me out on this. I think the devil that's in the details isn't the slow creep of electric vehicles, but more the source. The reason why we, as enthusiasts, tend to have a resistance towards the advent of EVs is because the companies that are making these cars didn't exist before they started making them. And it sort of feels like they're building these things with an aversion to the gas-powered engine. It feels like a car made by people who don't like cars. And the problem that comes with that is that the general market doesn't always buy what makes sense. We've seen it with SUVs, and that's why you have companies like Lamborghini now making them too. And so what ends up happening is the common car companies end up following suit with the EV trend and end up emulating the anti-cars. But with Porsche, what you end up having isn't Porsche making EVs, it's an EV made by Porsche. This is a company that's built itself on the driver's car since its inception. There's a reason why that gold emblem exists. Porsche has thought about this in reverse. They didn't think, how do we get people moving without using gas? They thought about what makes the love of the drive, and they took electric power to serve that purpose. This is huge. Another thing to pay attention to is the fact that Porsche backed out of the World Endurance Championship with their 919, and with no more rules to follow, they added an electric motor with the same amount of power as an M3, and along with a few other aerodynamic modifications, this car lapped the Nürburgring in 5 minutes and 19 seconds and beat Lewis Hamilton's F1 record at Spa. Even more important than that is the reason they backed out of the World Endurance Championship. They did so to focus on their presence in Formula E, not to mention they have greater than a 15% stake in Rimac now. This is why it's important that the Taycan's batteries are designed to handle serial launches over and over without overheating, or why it's so important that when you let off of the throttle, the car can coast like a normal car rather than always use regenerative drag braking. It's also why it's so ominous when you learn that the fuel door, which is motorized, can push through harder in the winter to break through ice. It's why it's important when Porsche does it, but it's meaningless when some other electric car can do a 2-second 0 to 60 every 15 minutes. I'm trying to think of an example or an analogy, but it's like corporate suits trying to market the punk rock movement or underground hip hop. No, you don't get it. No, a 0 to 60 time is not what wins us over. It takes a certain pride in the science as well as the art to get it. It takes a pedigree. It takes reputation. So with the Taycan, is it way out of the reach of the average consumer? Undoubtedly at a price climbing over $180,000. And at the outset that may seem exclusionary, but just like with all technology, and just like with the bells and whistles we see in our economy cars now, it always starts out high up, when it's in the right hands, that is.